There are few things better than a team who supports your vision. There are few things better than being able to collaboratively build and create impact. As somebody who started as a solopreneur and waited way too long to make my first hire, I am telling you that finding the right team and building a right-sized team that sets the business up for continued success, both in the culture and the profitability, there is a sweet spot, but it is also directly connected with your quality of life. Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. And I am so excited to talk about team culture and fostering ambition. Never have I ever had a client that we didn't talk about team issues and feeling like the team was not where they wanted it to be. And I really want you to think about the team that you currently have in place, whether it's 2 people or 200 people. I want you to ask yourself the question of, is your team engaged or are they disengaged? And what does your team turnover look like? The reality is your team culture directly impacts your bottom line. And this is why one of the key areas of focus with my clients is on finding the right size of team, the right roles of team, and the right responsibilities of team. Because a high performing team is the difference between the longevity and the success of your business and stagnation. I had a client who came to me and she had already passed 7 figures in revenue. She was absolutely killing it externally, but internally she was crumbling. She had a lot of mom guilt because she wasn't able to be present for her 3 little girls. At this point, she had had her 3rd daughter and gone right back to work. And she was not happy. She was not happy. She felt so much pressure to uphold the standard that she wanted in her business and for her clients, but there was just so much pressure on her. When she came to me, she had a full leadership team. I believe her team, right off the top of my head, I'm trying to think about her actual org chart. I believe her team was around between 10 and 12 people. There was a leadership team. There was, people in these very specific roles underneath each leader. And it was a lot. And she was feeling the burden of carrying all these salaries for this team and feeling like all of that fell on her performance. And what we realized in our work together after spending about 2 years together to reformat and rebuild and get her to a place where she built literally her dream life with being able to be present for her family, being able to have a deep relationship with her husband, taking time off work to travel with her husband, buying her dream beach house, all of these things, and actually enjoying the freaking beach house that she bought. All of these things were possible because we built the right team and all of the other stuff we did, including her internal work and her willingness to change how she was operating. And that's why anytime you hear me on any of my episodes, you're never going to hear me just talk about the tactical, tangible things. We also have to address our mindset, our perspective, and realize that we have to take personal responsibility, because right now, wherever you are, you put yourself there. And I mean that with the most love and the most kindness. But once you recognize that, that's what gives you back the power to change it, right? And so if your team is frustrating you, if the turnover of your team feels exhausting, if you feel like there's too much team pressure because you have too many team members, then we can change it. But let's talk about how you need to create a team culture that is motivating, that is full of people who are ambitious, and actually retain the people that you have. So I first want to start with the reality that the culture of a business matters more than the perks. So if we think in terms of sales, people buy from people they like, right? All of my clients, and they didn't necessarily buy from me because they were like, I like Kelsey, but they bought from me because they knew we had similar values, right? They knew that I understood them. They knew that being a mom of 3, being an entrepreneur for 14 years, I get it. They knew that they could trust me, right? And so the same goes for your team. It's important that not that we lean into our people-pleasing personalities, because that's the opposite of what we want to do, but we want to create a culture where people matter, where people feel they are seen, they are heard, they are understood, right? You have to build in your business communication policies that allow people to be human. And I don't mean that I need you to have an open door for everybody to come and like dish all their personal shit to you. But what I do mean is that if we only practice authoritative leadership, if we talk down to people, if we are consistently telling people how they're not doing enough, then people aren't going to want to stay with us. So it's so much more about the culture and the energy and the way that we communicate and what and who we are and how we lead our people than it is all of the tangible tactical stuff. When I'm talking with clients about possibilities for expansion for current team members, there's always this thought of like, adding more benefits for people. And yes, absolutely. I think benefits are great, especially depending on like how long somebody's been there, what the benefits are, how you structure them. There's a million different ways to do this. There's a million different ways to pay people and to make them feel appreciated. But things like, even like health stipends or gym memberships or doing things like that don't necessarily build loyalty. And what I've found is that a lot of my clients are frustrated because they don't feel like their team members are being loyal to them. And anytime we feel like they're not being loyal, or they feel like they do so much for their team, but they don't appreciate them, the question to ask is, am I being the example of that? Every single time a client says to me that they are frustrated about something they aren't seeing from their team member, I will ask them, well, are you doing that? So if you're frustrated about not feeling appreciated because you do so much for your team, how often are you recognizing them and appreciating them? How often are you telling them what an asset they are? How often are you bringing to the surface the reality of the position that they hold being directly tied to the bigger vision and purpose of your business? And I think a lot of times, especially in administrative positions, those people can get lost. My operations and client services manager, at least once a week, I'm like, I literally could not breathe without you. Like, you are my foundation of everything. Like, she holds everything together. Like, she is amazing. And I always want her to know that. And so I want you to think about not just the perks that you're giving people, trying to make them feel valued, but how you're speaking to them, how you're leading them, how you're empowering them. Because most times somebody will take a lower paying job with a place that they feel happy in, then they will take one that's higher paying that has all the perks. So define what you want your culture to feel like, and then make sure that you are being an accurate representation of that. A toxic or unmotivated culture, one that has a lot of gossip or drama or negativity or blaming, those things are going to affect everybody's productivity, because everybody's going to spend so much time in their head thinking they're not doing enough or they're not doing good enough, that it's going to affect their output. It's going to affect how they show up. And if you have an in-person service, like a lot of my wellness clinics, you need your people to be happy and bubbly and be able to talk to people. You can't have them in their heads beating themselves up because they don't feel good enough. We want to focus on building people up and empowering them. And we can give really good, clear critiques and feedback while also making it solution focused and oriented. So if you want to create a thriving team culture, you need very clear communication. You need your expectations to be set. You need to make sure that you are communicating well. You need to make sure you are communicating clearly. You need to say the things that you may be afraid to say and figure out how to say them kindly and figure out how to have solution-focused conversations. And you need to empower with your words. It's so much like parenting, right? Like if we keep critiquing our kids, they feel smaller. And then when they're smaller, they shrink, they hold back. That's not what we want from our teams. We want our teams to stand with us side by side collaboratively. And so in order to do that, we need to build them up. We need to make sure they understand what an asset they are, right? So set your expectations, give them success metrics, set KPIs that aren't just data-based, but also environment-based, that are also happiness-based, you can create these things and be creative with these things to make sure that it's aligned. Make sure that it's aligned with the business values. Make sure that they are accurately representing your business and that everybody's holding everybody accountable. So we need clear communication. We need empowerment. Empowerment is created not just by our words, but also by our actions, giving team members ownership of their tasks, of their responsibilities. I have something in my business that I call project leadership, and it is essentially the permission to everybody on my team that if they see something in the business that needs to be improved, or they think they could improve, or they think could be optimized or more efficient, or could be added that would make things better depending on our goals, they have full freedom to say, hey, I saw this. This is what I think we could do with it. This is what it looks like. Here's the plan. And then run with it. I love giving them that autonomy. So giving people ownership of their work, not micromanaging them. And if you feel like you have to micromanage, it probably means that you're not being clear in your expectations. So giving team members ownership of their work, empowering them, again, not just with words, but with your actions, because you can tell people, you can build them up with words all day, but we both know that actions speak louder than words. So if you're telling somebody you're amazing, you're such an asset, and then you're questioning everything that they do, they're going to be like, something's off here. So we need clear communication. We need to empower them, and then we need to recognize them. Never have I ever had a client but we didn't implement some sort of recognition strategy. We get so busy in the business and we get in our heads that we're paying people so they need to just do the job, that we forget these people have no commitment to us that can't be broken. Anybody could leave at any point in time. And so showing people appreciation, and especially if you know what their love language is, obviously if their love language is physical touch, maybe let's not do that for HR purposes. But asking them, how do you prefer to be recognized? Do you like to be recognized publicly? In my meeting agenda, which is actually inside the team management bundle, if you haven't downloaded the team management bundle, it is a private podcast. It's 5 episodes, and I go in depth about your perspective, your leadership, and your mindset changes that you need to make to be a better leader. And I accompany that with 5 downloads that are templates that you can use with your team, including my meeting agenda, performance review, quarterly planning, and a couple of other ones. So in that meeting agenda, one of the spaces that I have in there is recognition. Going to a team member and recognizing them for their efforts, for their attitudes, for the way that they handled something, for the way that they collaborated with each other. Celebrating those wins and showing appreciation regularly helps tremendously, and nobody does it enough. So these 3 things, making sure that you have these 3 things, will change everything. And if you want to have a more motivated team, if you want to retain your team for longer, then you need to do a few additional things, right? So if you want to have a good culture, you're going to communicate clearly, you're going to empower them, and you're going to recognize them regularly. If you want to motivate them and retain them, you need to create growth opportunities for them. So just like I talked about having the leadership, the project leadership in my business, that is an opportunity for growth, because my designer could come to me and say that she wanted to do something for social media that was like outside of her scope. I'd be like, cool, go for it. So being able to have a collaborative conversation about, let's say, so my designer, she designs all of my web pages. And so for that, she had very little skill set or knowledge around SEO. SEO is very important for websites. And so finding a course that she could take to learn about SEO. So creating growth opportunities. When people feel stagnant, they start to like wiggle around and look around and get distracted. You don't want that. You want them to see growth potential within the company. So if there is a trajectory upwards, even if that upwards is into a completely different position that is more aligned with their skill set and their strengths, there is possibility there. And that's what people want to feel. They want to know that they're showing up and obviously have purpose, and that purpose is aligned with a bigger vision. But they also want to know like they can grow, right? So my team and I are always talking about, how they can grow, different things that they can do, how we can optimize different things, other things they have interest in pursuing. That is so important. You also want to build trust. So 2 months ago, I got on our monthly, like all hands, my full team meeting, and I vulnerably shared the personal development work that I had been doing behind the scenes, and shared that because I wanted them to see how that was going to roll into some business changes that we were making, and for them to also hold me accountable to certain patterns that I had seen within my own leadership. Being transparent about what the goals are, being transparent about what the challenges are, taking personal responsibility and ownership for when you fall short builds trust. When people trust you, that is truly one of the greatest things. Because when somebody trusts you, when somebody gives you their trust, that is a deeper level relationship that creates so much opportunity and possibility. So learn to lean into vulnerability, learn to be transparent. And then the other thing you want to be doing is you want to be proactive with asking team members for feedback, because a lot of times we make assumptions. People who just are showing up checking boxes, we don't know if they're happy. We don't know if they like their role. We don't know if they want to stay. We don't know if they're looking for other jobs. Ask them what they need to feel happy, what areas they want to grow in. Just like I ask all clients halfway through their contract and at the end of their contract for feedback, I do the same for my team, because I need to know that they're okay, because I need them. Like, that's the thing that is so easy to lose sight of is, sure, we can hire and fire, we can find somebody new, but none of us really want to do that. Hiring and firing sucks. Which is why we want to make sure that we get the right people in the right roles. So also one of the things in the team management bundle is my hiring and onboarding blueprint, which is pure gold. So please check that out. Again, that's free. Link is in the show notes for that. But I want you to ask your team members for feedback more frequently, at least every 6 months, if not once a quarter. And the last thing that I will say in creating a team culture that is motivating, that you retain, where people are ambitious and excited to work for you, is you need to make sure that you're preventing burnout and resentment. So in order to prevent something, we need to know where it comes from. And so we need to balance our workloads, and we need to respect boundaries. One of the greatest ways to do this is to be an example of that yourself. It's very easy to get frustrated that people aren't working as many hours as you when you're working too many hours. You need to set clear policies for time off. If you have a remote team, you want to be clear about like what that looks like in terms of hours and expectations. And then in your feedback, you need to ask about like pulse check. How are they feeling? How is their capacity? And these are things we aren't thinking about, because for most of my clients, they're either on the verge of burnout, have been burnt out, or are feeling resentful. So it's about figuring out where those things are coming from and fixing them. So I want you to make sure that the workload capacity is tracked so that that can be balanced. Create boundaries with yourself. Be an example of boundaries. Have clear policies of what time off looks like, schedule remote work, and then again, ask for feedback, not just on their in the business, but about them personally. Are they happy? Somebody who's not happy is not going to perform well, right? So if you want to build a team culture that will help you not just retain the right people, but if you want to make sure that your team is right sized, if you want to make sure that you have people in the right roles and responsibilities, and you need to step out of the business to be able to see that, we can work together privately to craft that plan for you to make sure that everything's working together. I have a VIP business assessment that will assess 8 areas of your business and allow me to see where your gaps are so that we can create solutions to fix it. And we will put the link for you to book a consultation call if you want in the show notes. But at the very least, I need you to grab the team management bundle. The private podcast episodes are 15 minutes or less. They're coming to you directly in an email to make it easy and seamless, along with those downloads so that you can implement those right into your business with your team. So thank you for listening today. Next week, we're talking about making that shift from chaotic leadership, very reactive leadership, into being a more proactive leader. Because at the end of the day, everything that we've talked about in this series starts with you. So I will see you guys next week for that episode.